We continue our focus on Europe in this broadcast as Italy continues to be the new hotbed of the coronavirus epidemic as far as the global stage is concerned. Over 50,000 people have been infected in Italy alone and the death toll is over 5,000. Joining us for more on this is WION correspondent Lucy Hu, who's joining us from Brussels. Lucy, thank you so much for joining us. Italy continues to battle this pandemic, isn't it? What's the latest you're learning from that country?
Well, really alarming news coming from Italy over the weekend, particularly on Saturday when the highest death toll on record. Italy setting another record on that, nearly 800 in just 24 hours. That was then followed by 651 deaths on Sunday. So clearly a worsening situation there. The number of dead now nearly at 5,500 in total. And the number of cases now well in excess of 50,000. It, of course, started in the Lombardy north, and doctors and medics are battling still the worst of the outbreak. In the northern region, we're hearing reports of young doctors without the personal protective gear that they need, working without gloves or without sufficient materials to deal with the crisis. So a big appeal coming from Italy to keep the personal protective equipment coming in. And certainly the EU is working hard to coordinate those efforts to make sure that Italy has everything it needs in terms of equipment. But meanwhile, the situation is continuing to worsen in countries like France and Spain, despite those lockdown measures that have been in place for nearly a week now in some countries. And certainly here in Belgium, we are now into the second week of lockdown measures.
Absolutely. You mentioned Spain and France. Lucy, what's the latest as far as Spain is concerned? We are learning, or we're reading reports as well, that medical services in Spain, especially in Madrid and Barcelona, have been overwhelmed with the sheer number of cases in Spain as well.
Yes, extraordinarily, the venue where the COP25 conference was held, a huge climate change conference just 4 years ago. That enormous conference space is now being used as basically a military hospital to house 5,000 patients. So we're seeing some extraordinary pictures, which gives you a sense of quite how much Spain has changed. Spain was one of the first to follow Italy in introducing these very strict quarantine measures, and certainly we are seeing similar measures to Italy being imposed. People asked to stay at home for all but essential travel, whether that's to go to the supermarket or to the pharmacy or to see a doctor. But people really severely restricted on what they can do. But the number of cases continues to mount there. We are now well in excess of 12,000 cases in Spain. Clearly the number of dead is continuing to increase as well. But obviously medical authorities and governments are hoping that these strict measures imposed in European countries like France, Spain and Italy and Belgium here too, and now of course Germany, we're seeing the introduction of measures as well, that those will start to have an impact in the coming days and weeks.
Absolutely. Time and again, Indian Prime Minister at least has been calling for a global effort to battle this pandemic, and we've seen India also send aid and supplies to Italy now, and other countries from around the world have been helping each other. Can you tell us about this effort? Italy has been receiving a lot of aid. We're also learning that China has sent a team of doctors and aid to Italy as well.
Yes, and it's interesting what's happened with that trip, because apparently the Chinese authorities, there are reports that they were shocked at the way that the quarantine measures were being imposed in Italy, and that more needed to be done, and that Italy could learn from China in how to impose really strict quarantine measures. The EU has been, of course, looking at this. It has had some criticism directed at it for failing to give Italy the aid that it needed at the early stage when the outbreak has started to really worsen, particularly in the Lombardy north, with regards to the provision of personal protective equipment, but also financial support to help Italy deal with the worst of the outbreak in Europe. Certainly, the way that the EU is trying to coordinate now is to pool resources from all member states, all EU 20 member states. It's limited the exports from within the EU bloc to make sure that the EU 27 has everything that it needs, and that the resources will go to the countries most in need. Clearly, for the moment, that is Italy, France and Spain that are being the worst affected. But of course, the number of cases in Germany is continuing to mount, which is why we've seen these measures introduced there over the weekend. So the EU is working hard to give Italy the support that it needs with regards to personal protective equipment, and the Italian government has announced 25 billion euros in emergency funding. I'm sure that we will see that number increase, particularly as the number of cases now nearly reaches 60,000.
Right, Lucy, who joining us from Brussels, getting us all the updates as far as Europe's battle against the coronavirus pandemic is concerned. Italy continues to be a major concern globally, as the death rate in Italy is almost double of the global average of infections due to COVID-19.